Hi everyone, it's Wednesday the 16th of September and we are doing our second lesson on equivalent fractions. Okay, now yesterday we started to find equivalent fractions. So for example, if I asked you to find an equivalent fraction for this one 2/5, if I asked you to find an equivalent fraction for 2/5, would you be able to do that? Have 10 seconds to think about your answer. What would an equivalent fraction be for 2/5? Hopefully, some of you may have said 4/10. Hopefully, some of you may have said 6 over, times that by 3, 15. Okay, remember, the biggest rule with equivalent fractions, whatever you do to the numerator, you do to the denominator. Whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. Okay, so for this one, we've times it by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 5 is 10. For this one, we've times it by 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Yeah, 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 3 is 15. What about this one here? What about this fraction here? Can you give me an equivalent fraction for this one, please? I'll give you 10 seconds to think. Okay, hopefully some of you would have said 6 over 14, as you've times the top by 2 and the bottom by 2, the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2. Also, some of you may have said 9 over 21, because that there is timesing the top by 3, the numerator by 3, and the bottom by 3. Now you could have even said 300 over 700, as that's timesing the top by 100, the numerator by 100, 3 times 100 is 300, and the denominator, the bottom, by 100, 300 over 700. Okay, that's another equivalent fraction. Remember, equivalent, equal to, or the same as. Let's go to the next page. Remember, with equivalent fractions, you don't just have to multiply, you can divide. If we divide this fraction here, okay, if we're using dividing to work out an equivalent fraction, what one could we come up with? If we're using dividing, have 10 seconds to have a think. I'm sure you can work out a multiplication one, but what about a division to find an equivalent fraction? Okay, if you thought dividing the top one by 5 and dividing the bottom, the numerator by 5 and the denominator by 5 to equal 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 20 divided by 5, 4. Okay, you could get 3/4. You could get 3/4. Okay, next up, let's have a look at this one here. Okay, let's have a look at this one here. 18 over 20, this fraction. What can we, if we're doing dividing, okay, if we're doing dividing to find an equivalent fraction, what can we divide by to get an equivalent fraction? Hopefully you realize that these are both even numbers, so that we can divide by 2, and we can get, let's have a look here, so 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. And we would have, oh, don't like that 0, have another go at that, is 9 over 10. Okay? Now, the simplest form, that's another thing that we need to make sure we know for our equivalent fraction vocabulary, okay? Simplest form means we want it as an equivalent fraction, but we want it as the lowest possible fraction numbers possible. For example, this one here, this is 10 over 20, but we want to make this as simple as possible, okay? We want to make this one as simple, and if we divide this one by 10 and this one by 10, we can make 1/2. Now that's the simplest form possible, okay? Because it's the lowest possible numbers that we can use for the fraction, okay? For example, this one here, we can divide the top one by 3 and the bottom one by 3 to also put the number in its simplest form, which is 1/3. Okay, these are the lowest possible, okay, the simplest possible fraction that we can do. Because this over here, 3 over 9, is also equal to 1/3, but it's not as simple as 1/3. Okay, it's not as simple. What about this one here? What can we do to this one to make this one more simple? The simplest equivalent fraction possible. Have a think for 10 seconds. Hopefully you thought that we can divide by 5, okay? And here 15 divided by 5, okay, is 3. And 35 divided by 5 is 7. 3 over 7. Now we can't divide that one anymore, okay? We can't make that one any simpler. So that is the fraction in the simplest form, okay? Because we can't divide that. We can't divide that by 2, 3, 4, because it won't make, it will leave a remainder when we divide. And the last one here, if we divide these ones by 100, what are we going to get for our simplest form fractions? Hopefully you're saying 1/5. Okay, so that's a little bit more information about the simplest form, but we'll recap that in the video call class, okay? Next up, success criteria. When you're thinking about equivalent fractions, remember to multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator. What you do to the top, you must do to the bottom. What you do to the numerator, you must do to the denominator, okay? That's very, very, very important. So you can't just multiply 1 or divide 1. You have to do both. And remember the term simplest form, okay? Breaking that fraction down into the most simplest fraction possible. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you your activity. Okay, I'm going to show you your activity, and it's right here. Amazing equivalence. It's called I can identify equivalent fractions. And what you have to do for this one is you have to help the wizard to find the path through the maze to his spell book by finding the equivalent fractions. Okay? And then you can, so for example, you start here with half. Now, which way are we going? Can we go this way? Is 4 over 7 an equivalent fraction? Or is 5 over 10? Have a think. Clearly, 5 over 10 is the equivalent fraction. So we're going to start going this way. We're going to follow down this way. So we can draw a line from here to here. Then we've got to the next section here. We're at 1/5. Okay? Is 1/5 and 1/8 equivalent fractions, or is 1/5 and 2/10 equivalent fractions? Okay, then you can follow the line, maybe going this way, and then you go on to the next one and the next one. Remember, these are blocks in the road, so you can't go up or down. Okay, you have to follow because these are big blocks in the way. Okay, and then you write down the pairs that you've used on your journey. You write down the pairs that you've used on your journey. I'll explain a little bit more about this in the video call, but for now, hopefully that helps a little bit with the equivalent fractions activity for today.